Hi guys, this is Dikshit. Welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna discuss about one of the important interview question. So that has been asked in all the interviews. If you mention Docker as a skill set, that is what is difference between run, CMD, and entry point. So these three are basically Docker file instructions. With this, like we have many other instructions like work directory and from and copy, add. There are many other things. But today I'll discuss about run, CMD, and entry point. So where we need to use run and where we need to use CMD and where we need to use the combination of CMD and entry point. We're gonna discuss about all these things. Like I'll start with run first. So run is also a Docker file instruction, as I've mentioned earlier. So it is basically is used to install packages. So that means like so when you pull a Docker image, any Docker image like Ubuntu or CentOS or Debian, so only minimal packages, like it won't be having all the packages that you need. So if you need it, like you need to customize according to your project requirements. Like which has very basic, like let's take an example as CentOS image. So which has very basic packages installed on top of that. So let's say I have a project requirement that like I need to install packages like so I need to have a package in a Docker image like tree and wget. So to do this, like so we need to take CentOS image, and on top of that we need to install tree and wget. So we'll just check like we'll pull CentOS image and we'll check whether like all these packages are installed or not. And run can also be like if your project requirement is there, like you need to install some third party applications on top of your CentOS image, that also achievable. And normal basic Unix commands, like if you want to execute ls-l or something, like you need to remove some file, then also you can go ahead and you can use this run command. So first what we will do is like by using a very simple and basic Docker files, we'll have a look like how the run instruction will be there in Docker file. And also as the next line suggests, like we can have multiple run instructions in a Docker file. So I'll just show that. So I have one Docker file already written, so which is very basic. So I'm not taking a complicated Docker file. So if you see my Docker file, so which has only three lines. One is from CentOS. So in CentOS, I don't have wget and tree. So that's the reason I have two run instructions. So I'm installing wget and tree. So let's build this image and then create a container out of this, and then just verify like whether wget and tree is installed or not. Okay. To build the image, so we'll use the command. So docker build dot. So dot in the sense like in present working directory. So it is expecting Docker file should be there. And the next argument I'll give is Docker uh, build dot. After that, like I'm giving a tag. -t is used for tag. And then I'm naming my image as Docker run. I'll name it as Docker run. So it will take, I guess, like few seconds. So that's what, as mentioned, like you can have multiple run instructions in single Docker file. And the next one is like I can say the run Docker instruction is compile time. So why I'll tell that is compile time is, so whatever the commands you specify in run instruction, so it will be executed when you build a Docker image. So if you see here, I have mentioned m install -y wget. So it is installing, like it is executing this particular command while building an image. So I'll later discuss about CMD and entry point. To keep in mind, whatever I mention in CMD and entry point will be executed when I create a container. But when it comes to run, so whatever the commands I give in run instruction, so it will be executed when we are building an image. So that is what, like when I built an image, so all this like this run, and if I see scroll through this log, so I can see like another instruction that is like install a tree also. So somewhere here, yeah, see, run m install hyphen y tree. Hyphen y is like I'm giving s for all the prompts. Like when you see, like when you are installing in your normal machine, so when you say like m install tree, so it prompts you like yes or no. To answer by default yes, I've given hyphen y. Okay, and as we discussed, like it is a compile time instruction. And the next thing is like when the run command is executed, run instruction is executed, what happens is like in the old layer, all the new, the commands that you specified in run will be executed on old layer, and it commits to the old layer, and it will gonna create the new layer, which will be given to the further instruction. That means, see, I have 3 lines. So what it does is like first it will gonna pull the CentOS as base image. So this will create one layer. So that on top of that layer, this command will be executed. And obviously, like when you execute these commands, so there will be a file changes. Like in CentOS, everything considered as a files. So some file changes will gonna happen. So that commits will be committed onto the old layer, and the new layer will be created by Docker for these 2 steps. Okay, and that image, that not the image, that layer is given to the next command. Okay, so this is how the layering works. So the run command, like you need to keep in mind, like so once the run command is executed, all the new changes will committed to the old layer, and new layer will be created, that is given to the next proceeding whatever the instructions that you have mentioned in your Docker file. And basically we have 2 forms. One is shell form, and another one is execute form. So in this, like execute form is basically it's a kind of a JSON, and the shell form is basically it's run, and whatever the command you want to execute, give it there. So in shell form, so by basically the executable is such. So if you give commands, like it is executed in shell. And in execute format, so executable is by default it is not shell. If you want to use any shell commands, so then you need to specify the executable, like bin sh-c, then you need to provide the commands here. So these basically are 2 forms of run instruction. So you can use any of it, like depending on your usage. Like when it comes to CMD and entry point, I'll just show like, so depending on situation, which type of form you need to use. Okay. So the next one is CMD. CMD is basically, it is also a Docker instruction. The main purpose of CMD is like to provide a defaults to executing content. That means, so as I said, like this is runtime instruction. So when you create a container out of an image, this instructions will be executed. So I'll take a simple Docker file again. I'll just explain it. I'll just clear my screen. Okay. So I'll just edit my Docker file. So if you see here, so what I'm mentioning is I am taking a CentOS as an image. So then after that, like I've given an instruction CMD ls-ls. So what it does, like when you create a container out of this image, so when I build, I'll get an image. If I create a container out of that image, what it does, like when you create a container, so I'll get the output of ls-ls. So I'm telling, like when I create a container, this command should be executed. So that is what it says, like defaults to the executing container. When I execute the container, what command should be run. So that you'll specify in CMD. Okay, let's save this file and let's execute. Docker, first build it. Docker build dot hyphen t. I'll name it as Docker run, and then enter. So if you see here, my image is created. So to list all the images, so the command is image ls. So if you see, I have a Docker run image. By using this, I'll just gonna create a container. So we'll just see what is the output of that. Okay, Docker run -id, and then I'll just give the image name. See, if you see, when I execute a container, so I'm getting an output. So the command was ls-ls, right? So I'm getting these commands. So here you can see like, the command is hard coded. So let's say user want to change that. Like I don't want ls-ls. I just want to see the hidden files also. Hidden files in the sense like I just want to see the files which starts with dot. So basically, if you do ls-ls, it won't show um, hidden files. So let's say I want to see the hidden files also. So that time, what we need to do, we need to go inside Docker container and Docker file, and then we need to change the CMD. So you don't need to do that, because like it's just a default when you supply any command. So from the runtime, so CMD, whatever you have specified in CMD will be overridden. So we'll see this in by using this example. So I'll run the same. I'll run the container with the same image. So Docker run id. Now I need to execute ls hyphen. Let's take ax. I just want to list the files, all the files with L, long listing. So when I type this, you can see like all the files. Like if you see the previous output, we didn't get any dot files. Dot files because the instruction was ls hyphen ls. So now user has issued the command from the command line, that is ls hyphen al, all long listing. So what it is doing, so whatever the command that you have provided inside your Docker file is overridden by the command you have provided here. Okay, so now you can think of it like so entire command has been issued by the user itself. Let's say ls is common, so like this image is there for listing a file itself. So that's that time. So why should I provide the entire command? So you have if you want to avoid this scenario, how will you do this? Like, because whatever the commands, whatever the instructions you're giving in CMD will be overridden if user gives any input from command line. Okay, so to do this, like so we'll use entry point. Entry point is also it is similar to CMD, wherein like it makes a container executable. Means like whatever the command, like so whatever the command, if you supply it from the command line, so will be concatenated whatever which is there in the entry point. Okay, so it will be a bit confusing. If you see with the example, then you might be getting a fair idea what is like CMD and what is entry point. Okay, and vi Docker file. So again, CentOS, and now our intention is like to make this container. So user shouldn't provide ls at all. Like you just need to provide the options like l hyphen s hyphen a, any option which has which is there in ls basically. So it has to supply only the option. So to that time, we need to use entry point. So entry point as an instruction. And one more thing to keep in a Docker file, you can have only one CMD. Like if you have multiple CMD, only the last one will be taken into account. Okay, we'll see. First this thing, then we'll jump on to what is entry point. Okay, so let's say I have multiple CMDs. Okay, Cool. Hello. Okay. So I'll put one more CMD. And this is not mandatory that like all the Docker instructions should be in a capital letter. It can be in a smaller case also, but it is always recommended to be there in the uppercase, because to have some kind of like differentiation between your commands and the Docker instructions. So it is not mandatory that like you should specify your instructions in like uh, uppercase itself. It's a recommendation. It's a good practice to have it in a uppercase. Okay, let's try this one also. Like I'll give it in a lower case, and sorry, from last CMD. Let's save this, and then we need to build the image again, because we have few changes in our Docker file. So let's go ahead and build this Docker file. I'll just name it as Docker -run 1, because we have already Docker run. So now if I see the list of images, so uh, so yeah, we have our image. So what I'll do is like I'll execute the container of uh, this image. Let's do that. -it, and then if I give this, see, only the last CMD will be taken into account. You can have multiple, but no use. Like whatever is there in last CMD will be only taken care. Okay, and as I mentioned, like we have three forms in CMD. One is executable, like executable format. So as I've taken this from official Docker document, so they have mentioned it is preferred. So yes, like CMD, this format is always preferable, because you can use this CMD to provide the defaults for executing container, as we did it few minutes back. Or you can use it as like, if you use entry point in your Docker file, so you can use this CMD as a supplying additional parameters to the entry point. So that is why this is a preferable format to use. And we can use shell form also. It is always there, like you can use for shell form also. Now let's see the next instruction. So what is entry point? Entry point is also a Docker instruction, so which makes your container executable. That means with an example. So we discussed, right? So in the previous example, when we executed that particular Docker file, so it was just listing of files. If I want to change instruction, so I wanted to supply the whole command in command line. Then so whatever you specify in CMD will be overridden and executed. Okay. Now my scenario is like, by the user, like this image is specifically for listing the files, right? So why the user should supply the command also, ls command also. So I just need to make sure like you just need to play with options. That's all. So ls should be already there in your container. So you just need to supply only the options. So that is what my requirement is. To achieve that, so we need to do we need to use entry point. Okay, so we'll take again CentOS as base image, and then what I'll do is like I'll just take entry point. and then so in this case, like let's say I have two parameters as it was there in CMD. So what it does is like ls, I'll just keep L. So then let's save this file and then build a Docker image. Build dot hyphen t Docker entry one. I'll just name it as Docker hyphen entry. So when I create this image and when I create container out of it, I can just use the image name or image ID. Anything is fine. Let's try with image ID now. So when I create this, so you can just see the output is ls. So as we discussed, like so I mean user can provide his options also, right? So yeah. So when you supply like see, I just want A. I don't want long listing. Yeah. Oh, because like what we have mentioned, like uh, already in your Docker file, so there is like ls comma L is there. So what it does is like in this previous output, see it is only ls hyphen L. So if you see here, so all I mean like hidden files are not displayed. So when I supply one more argument like from the command line, so what it does is like the command will look like this. Like let me open a notepad plus plus and I'll just show you. See how it works is like when I execute it for the first time, so it works, it executes this command. So when I execute the container with this option, so the command in entry point will look like this: ls hyphen L and A. So basically whatever you supply from your command prompt will be concatenated to the entry point. Okay. And let's say my requirement is now, so when a user supplies some argument, so let's say user has supplied only hyphen A, so my entry point command should look like ls hyphen L, ls hyphen A, that's all. So now it is like I mean how it is working is like it is concatenating ls hyphen L and hyphen A. So my requirement has now changed. So if user supplies any argument in command line, so it should execute only that argument. And if he doesn't supply anything, so then it should execute ls hyphen L. Okay. So to achieve this requirement, so we need to use the combination of CMD and entry point. So let's do that. So basically, I mean, CMD, if you use CMD, only one CMD has to be there in Docker file. If you have multiple CMDs, the last one will be taken into account. And when you execute the container by providing any arguments in command line, so if at all, if it is CMD in your Docker file, so it will be overridden. Like whatever the command you give in command prompt will be overridden by commands provided in CMD. If you use entry point, so whatever you specified in entry point will be concatenated with whatever you supply from command prompt. So we have seen already that examples. And now my requirement is like when user supplies any argument, it should execute only with like that argument. And if user doesn't provide any option for ls, so it should execute with ls hyphen L. Okay. So and it is always suggested like CMD I mean should be there at last. I mean it is not mandatory, so I mean that is the best thing. Like if someone sees like your Docker files, so they can easily understand like what they're providing. Okay. And now, so when you use the combination of entry point and CMD, CMD will provide extra arguments to the entry point. Okay. So I mean like let's say so we discussed like I'll just provide ls, I mean hyphen L here, And so in entry point, I'll just like I'll just put like ls. That's all. Okay. So when user provides any uh, command line arguments, so that will be concatenated with entry point. So let's say user gives -a, so -a will be concatenated with this entry point command, and then we'll get the output. If he doesn't provide any option, then whatever it is there in CMD will be concatenated with entry point, and it will be executed. Okay, so we'll try that. Before that, we need to build a Docker image. Docker build dot. I'll just tag it with Docker hyphen entry one. Okay, so then I'll just create a container out of this. So I'll use image ID again. Let's execute without any option. So let's see what will be the output. See, it has used ls-l. So that's why we are getting long listing. So when I execute with any option, so let's say I'll take A. A in the sense like it is not long listing. So it's just, shows the file names, hidden files with including hidden files. You can see like, so now when user supplies any option, it will be executed with this command. So if it doesn't provide any option, then it will be executed with ls-l. So that's what, like when you use a combination of entry point and CMD, so whatever whatever you have provided in CMD will be concatenated with the commands which you have provided in entry point. Okay, so and so that's what, like even this has two forms, like one is like execute form and shell form. So we have in the next slide we have a table, so that give a clear picture like if how the combination works. Okay, so and entry point is also a runtime instruction as we discussed for CMD. So runtime, entry point and CMD is one and the same, but as we discussed, like so when we use the combination, so entry point and the CMD will be concatenated. Hope you got that. So then next we'll proceed with the combination of like how it works, like the combination of CMD and entry point. And so this is the first table we'll look in. So if your Docker file doesn't have entry point and no CMD, so it'll be an error. So now you might be wondering, so like in our Docker file, so you might be wondering, like when we did a run exercise, so our Docker file didn't had any CMD or entry point. Now you might be thinking like, now why it didn't errored out. So now the important thing we want to say is like the base image. So CentOS is the base image. When we, this on top of this image only, we're doing all other things. When I go for Docker Hub and I search for CentOS, so this is the official image. So whichever has official image tag in that image, that is really the official one. So these things are all not official one. So which has been created by some users and they have updated it. So this is the official image. When you click onto that, so it will take to the document of that particular image. When you go for anything, see in our case we have used the latest. So when I click on the latest, so it'll redirect us to the Docker file of the CentOS. See, there is a CMD. So every Docker file should have not every Docker file. So in our case, like it is not explicitly mentioned, but in our base image, the CMD is mentioned. That's what, like CMD and entry point, any one of it like is mandatory. Okay, and so then if you have a CMD in execute format, okay, or run, like entry point, you don't have any entry point, and CMD in execute format, and the command will be this one, like So let's say in your Docker file, I'll take just a notepad. So let's say you have, this is your Docker file, CentOS, and you just have CMD and then ls-l. So the command that will be executed when you run a container is ls-l. Okay, and then if your Docker file doesn't have any entry point and you're giving commands like again like this command, so it will be like p1 cmd and p2 cmd. As we mentioned, like I mean, cmd has three forms, right? So one is like executable and you're just providing parameters and all, right? So this is the second row, so which is equal to this one. You're providing the executable, like means like you need to provide like this. Let's say you want to use sh as executable. That time what you need to do is like you need to provide executable like this, then sh -c. So when you provide like this, the output, I mean, the command will be executed as like bin sh-c and ls-l. Okay, and then this is like just a parameters you're supplying. So this is how it will be executed. If you use a shell format, so shell one, so then, I mean, whatever the arguments you provide here, it will be executed with shell. So these two are the same. Like if you consider this example, so if I mention in params this execute format bin sh-c, so it is executing with sh. So in this case, like it will be the similar one. Okay, and the next one is like if you have an entry point in the form of shell form. So then if you don't have any CMD, it will be executed like this bin sh-c, because for shell form sh is a default one. You can override. So by just supplying like this, like you can just override that executable also, saying like let's say I have entry point, and then you can bin bash. You can override that, and then you can provide your commands that has to be executed. You can do this also. So that is what, if you don't have any CMD, it will be whatever you have mentioned in entry point will be executed. And if you have any like CMD forms, other CMD forms, so any CMD forms, if they are available, if at all entry point is having a shell form, so whatever CMD you specify, it will execute whatever there in entry points. So that's what you need to choose between forms which you want to use. Like if you don't want to overridden from CMD, then you need to use entry point in a shell form. So if at all, if in our case, like we discussed about one example, right? In our case, like we concatenated whatever was there in CMD to the entry point. So that time we have used a execute format. But if you don't want to concat which I mean there in CMD, then you need to go for shell form. So I mean that is what I said like in the beginning. So when it comes to CMD and entry point, then you will get to know which form to use where in which situations. Okay, so then if you the last table, so I mean the right side table, so if you define entry point in execute format, and if you have the combination of CMD and execute format, so what will gonna happen? So how the commands will be concatenated as given wonderfully here. Like you can so this is the basic table. Like if you see this one, so you can get to know the combination. Like if no entry point, if entry point in shell, if entry point in execute format, so how it will gonna work. So hope you all understood this one. So I mean run CMD and entry point. So the basically a difference between our CMD and entry point is like CMD will provide the defaults to executing container. When it comes to entry point makes your container executable. So whatever the command if you give in while executing the Docker container, so if you provide some commands in like command line, so it will be overridden by I mean whatever you specify in CMD will be overridden. But if you use a combination of entry point and CMD, so whatever the commands is there in entry point will be concatenated with CMD and will be executed. Okay, and then yeah, that's all for this particular video. I've planned to explain, and at the every end of the video, I'm thinking to give a small tip, so that might be helping you in your like interview also. So if someone asks you like what is the latest version Docker has released, or whatever the version that you have used in your projects. So the basic way, I mean, the very simple way to remember is like every 3 months, once Docker will release a stable version. Okay, so how the Docker versioning will happen is the present year. So if someone asks like what is the latest version, so what is the present year? It is 2020. So I mean every 3 months I said like third month, sixth month, ninth month, 12th month, Docker will release the stable version. So now it is second month. If the previous version, then you need to go for previous year. So that is 19, the last two digits of the year, dot, and the month. So month is basically 3, 6, 9, and 12. So the latest version, it should be definitely 19.02. And you can specify it is like versioning. I think their versioning. You can just say like 19.12 is the latest version. And it is always suggested to tell like which version you have used for your project. It's better to say like which is compatible with Kubernetes, like 18.09 is the version which is like the version which is compatible with Kubernetes. So you can just say like which is like bit older. So I mean like 18th year, like 2018 and 09 the month. So that release I've used. You can say that. So this is the best way. Like the last two digits of the year dot the month. Month should be like 03, 06, 09, or 12. So I mean, it's better to tell like the previous versions that you can. I mean, like better to tell that the previous versions you have used. And yeah, that's all for the video. Thank you. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, and if you have any doubts, please comment. Thank you so much.